Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We'll go ahead and call this meeting, the Water Commission, on Tuesday, August 20th to order. And please join me in the, roll call. Everybody here, Dr. Carmichael will not be here tonight. Everybody else is here, including some new face, or at least one new face for all of y'all. But join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. That brings us to item number 4, citizen comment period. No citizens looking to talk. Okay, so move on to item 5 here. Item 4, business items. First one we have for consideration is item 4A, approval of minutes from April 16th. It's been since April that we've actually sat all around here and talked, but the minutes for the April 16th Water Commission regular meeting. That's right there in your packet there. Any comments for the minutes? We'll start on our right.
None.
On the left? Okay, nothing for the minutes there. Then a motion, please.
A motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the left? On the right? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Minutes are approved. Move over to the item 5B, number 1, Utility Department Monthly Activity Report. Stephen, please take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the month of July, we pumped 39.16 acre-feet from the Edwards Aquifer with a year-to-date total of 169.46, leaving 352.51 acre-feet available. Edwards is currently in Stage 3 restrictions, and Garden Ridge is in Stage 2 restrictions. Any day now we'll see probably Edwards go to Stage 4 since it's going to drop below 130, and the Comal Springs will drop below 100 cubic feet per second. As of today, we pumped 199.39 acre-feet from the Edwards with 310.08 available. Currently, for so far this year, we have lost 143.81 acre-feet from the Edwards due to restrictions. I estimate if we were to stay in Stage 3 or Stage 4 for the rest of the year, our total loss will probably be about 225 to 230 acre-feet for the entire year. We start with 653.287 acre-feet at the beginning of the year. We have pumped 36.90 acre-feet from the Trinity with a year-to-date total of 275. Well 9 and 10 at the Schoenthal plant have been pulled and have had the pumps, motors, and column pipes replaced. And we will evaluate conditions in the future to look for future replacements of those or upgrades to them. Currently, well 1 at 2250 plant is being worked on. We're going to replace the pump, column pipe, shafts. This should be completed at the beginning of September. All required monthly distribution samples have passed. Water loss was 2.5%. We had our TCEQ compliance investigation. This happens every 3 years. This investigation takes place every 3 years, and it's done to make sure that the city follows all TCEQ rules and regulations concerning water quality, disinfection, and all reports that go along with that process. They inspect all the well sites, all records concerning our water operation. We received no violations, so our next one will be in 3 years. Work orders, 247 completed. AMI information, total portal customers, 843. Meter daily readability percentages is 99.51% for 1,698 assigned meters. No main breaks reported. 1 leak adjustment approved for $170. And 2252 construction, still waiting on electric pole bracing and CenterPoint Energy to install gas mains so our contractor can finish the pipe relocation. That's all I have to report.
Well, there's a whole lot there. I assume we're probably going to have some questions. The first things, I want to start with a couple things. First of all, on the unaccountable unsold over the last 5 months has been pretty awesome. Y'all are doing a great job on that, and appreciate all the hard work that I know goes into that. I was also going to, I think that the meter availability has been sitting above 99.5 for the last few months also, which is a significant change from, we saw kind of a dip earlier this spring that we were kind of concerned about. Did we solve that, or I think there's some hardware changes we were thinking about making to help that out? Is that what happened?
I believe we actually added some extra antennas for the meters, didn't we, Michelle? So that helps them. Sometimes they're in a low location and it's just harder for it to read or line of sight, so it helps to add a little extender to boost the signal.
Is that last 0.5% there, is that sort of random, or is it specific areas that we keep having problems with, and has it been impacting anyone?
Normally the low-lying areas of the city, but it's kind of few, so it's not that bad.
Okay, any concerns from customers about it or anything? Okay.
No.
All right, I think I'm sure there's some tougher questions around here, so we'll go around the room here. Start on the left.
Have we had an increase of AMS customers? Is percentage of, do we have an increase of the AMS new customers?
I think a slight increase, right, Michelle?
That's kind of how are we doing overall as far as getting people on board?
So currently, we're like at 50% of what our customer service addresses are. So we are actually meeting our goal that we hoped for, like a few months ago that we talked about this, because we started at about like 20 to 30% participation, and now we're at like 50. So that's a really, really good percentage of participation.
Have you heard of any feedback as far as what's getting the best results as far as new people coming in? Is newsletter in the grapevine, or just what's generating the best bang for our buck?
So I was going to talk about that later.
Yeah, you
but
can just save it for your
I'll go ahead and
agenda
say it
item.
right now.
Yeah, that's on the agenda a little bit on, and she's going to go into a lot of detail.
Yeah.
And the short answer is it's the work she's doing.
Okay.
I was going to have another question on that as well, so I'll wait.
Steve, could you take us through the Edwards numbers again? What's available? I guess the bottom line of the question is will we have availability from Edwards through the end of the year based on our current usage rate and their cutting back?
Yeah, we've already computed all that. We've already looked ahead all the way to December 31st, and we're basically looking at anywhere from a reserve of 20, 25 to 15, and then from there, closer we get to there, we might just start pumping a little bit more to bring that acre feet down closer to below 10.
Okay, thank you.
So he has a rolling spreadsheet, Bill, that goes through there, and it continually counts down, and it shows how much we need to pump to get those two lines to meet at the end.
Right.
So. Anything else, sir?
No.
You good? Nothing, Steve?
You mentioned pulling pumps and stuff at wells 9 and 10. Could you just go in a little bit more detail on what happened and where we're at, or is it just routine replacement?
Well, those have been they haven't been worked on since, last I could tell, 2017. And every so often you have to pull them and just get stuff replaced and check it out, run a camera down and make sure everything's going right. Sometimes you'll see a GPM drop or whatever. That'll be an indicator that something might be needing to be replaced, or the motor's just getting burned out or overworked. So it was time to pull them and see what was going on, and if they needed to be stuff switched out, then we had it switched out. And then right now both are doing a lot better than they were over there at Schoenthal. We're getting, like, with both wells running at the same time, about 700 gallons per minute.
Okay, thank you.
Last chance for anyone? And the last thing I just want to, I know this got brought up at the council meeting earlier this month also, but I also want to say good job on the water compliance audit. So that great job from y'all and getting any little bugs worked out and getting it all taken care of and have that no violations, a big deal. And sort of, unfortunately, it's kind of what we're used to around here, but keep up the great work, Stephen. Appreciate it from you and the team. All right, that brings us to item 4B2 from the city council meeting. I'm just going to cover the latest city council meeting items that we had there. The first thing I want to point out is that at the last meeting, Michelle got recognized for 4 years of service. So everybody give her a round of applause, please. All right, a large part, I don't know how many of y'all attended the last city council meeting or perhaps watched it online. It was a long one, several hours in there. I'm not going to go through all of it. One thing I'm going to hit some highlights here, though. First of all, there was a budget that was proposed. There's a public meeting next week on that. You'll see some more details on that here in a bit. And I don't want to steal too much of Robin's thunder, but that budget proposal is directly tied into some of our water rate proposal as we go through here. The good news is it's also in your packet, so you can look in your packet, and the stuff that's important to us is on page 3 and 4 of that budget packet that is in there, if you want to take a sneak peek at that. Talked about all the utilities report stuff for the city engineer, that 2252 water line relocation. Stephen talked about it a little also. 82%, it's on hold. The contractor's demobilized right now, but we expect him to remobilize in early September and finish that water line up. I didn't misspeak, did I, Stephen? About that water line, get back on that in September, we think?
Maybe mid-September, hopefully.
Okay.
They're still, like I said, they're still waiting for poles to be braced, and CPS Energy has gotten a lot of their construction done on 2252. Right now, they're just tying in services, pressurizing their lines. So from about that, I guess you'd say that, the old house that's right there across from Easy Mart, somewhere around in there to across 2250, across 3009 at that intersection property is where they're going to finally tie in at and be done with that. So
Okay.
once that's done, we can actually get our guys probably to jump in there and get the water line in there.
Sounds good.
I know they're doing some redesigns and stuff, trying to get around the pole bracing to make it quicker, so still waiting on information on that.
Thank you. Looking here, I think the other one that I really want to bring up is that we have a new water commissioner sitting right here on my left, Nathan Dorsey. And he was approved we interviewed him a month and a half ago, I think, maybe, and then city council did approve him earlier this month, so thank you, Nathan. Thank you for being here. Would you like to give a speech to everyone, or are you good?
Of course, yeah, that's why I brought this binder. I got it prepared here. So, no, just appreciate it. Glad to be here. I've been trying to kind of get involved for a little bit since we moved in, so glad I got a spot and look forward to working with you.
All right. Did I miss anything, sir? No? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, go for the questions. Yep.
Regarding some items from the city council meeting, I don't know if it was this past meeting, but past meetings have talked about cost overruns related to CPS not completing their work in a timely fashion, contractor having to stop and restart. Do we know where that stands at this point?
I don't know exactly at this time. I know CenterPoint's kind of a little frustrated with them too, so they're asking the same questions about the bracing.
Okay.
From what our last engineer was talking about, they put in requests back in last October of
Right.
2023 and met several times with CPS out on the site, and they said they were trying to get the ball rolling, so it's kind of a matter on waiting on them.
Okay.
Any other questions on the right? Anything on the left? All right. So that was item 4B number 2, 4B number 3, AMI portal usage and outreach efforts. Michelle, please.
Okay, so it's been a while since we discussed, our efforts and how we were to increase the participation of our residents with the portal. What we do on a daily basis, as far as like answering phone calls, whenever they call about their bills or they have water loss, or they're calling in a panic because they think they got a leak, and it might not be just that. At that moment, when they're calling about those particular situations, that's when we let them know, or we ask them, have you registered in the portal? Do you have a login? Can you walk through this with me, what I'm seeing and what you're seeing, so that they get specific involvement in watching and monitoring their meter. So on a daily basis, we get phone calls, Sandra, myself, Shannon, get phone calls from new residents. We get phone calls from older residents, that have been here for many years that may not have ever seen it yet because, they just come across a situation where they had to, call us. But we also have information in our new customer packet that says, here's a guide, here's how you can log in, here's how you can put it on your phone. Lots of people use their phones now with apps and everything, so we encourage that highly. And so the 850 participants that we have, registered is a really significant jump from when we first started. Like I said, it was, in the low 30s. I think that's probably what we remember, like about 35%, I think, was even a good number to start with. But now that we're, at 50%, that's still a really good number. The fact that most people don't necessarily have, not everybody has a computer. Our population is, mainly retirees who may not have computers or want to access, the internet or, things such as that. We still offer our help, when we are trying to guide them through looking at their meter. We can still offer assistance and, print out things for them to see if they're coming to our window and asking. Those efforts are still there, but, I really feel strongly that we've done all that we can possibly do to encourage that, on a daily basis. And through any of our, packets and newsletter, our Grapevine has, little snippets every now and then, kind of reminders to let people know that they need to log in, get a login, look at your meter, see what you're doing on a monthly basis. That is something that we've done to improve those numbers. As far as, looking at leaks, the part of my new duties was to monitor the high users, high leak, type statuses that we get on a daily basis too. There might be some that may not necessarily be a leak. It may just be a continuous flow of somebody left a water hose running or something like that. We often get those type of phone calls as well. So, helping them to work through that has helped a lot too. But monitoring those notices, the notifications and alerts, has also significantly dropped the number of water loss adjustments that we've had or that are eligible, because we've been able to help them stop those issues, not letting it run for 2 and 3 weeks, before they actually do something. If they didn't have a login, or if we didn't have good information, contact information, things like that. So as far as like the adjustments, I did go back and do some research on years past before we had the AMI system and the meters. I looked at how much did we actually pay, and we've talked about this before. I know Jesse has talked to us about, you know, how much did we actually pay out in leak adjustments, credits. And in 2019, before my time, we paid over $11,000 in credits. This would have been before we got the AMI system as well. In 2020, we actually paid over $20,000 in credits. 2021, that's after we had, almost a year of with the new meters, and that decreased significantly to like 5,000, under 5,000. So, you know, we've gradually improved that and had, you know, success in monitoring those issues. Of course, you know, the responsibility still falls on the resident to be able to monitor their own, you know, plumbing and appliances and pools and what have you. But so this year, as I've, you know, tried to monitor those leaks on a daily basis or even weekly sometimes, you know, just with the different things going on in our city, I have, you know, gathered the numbers that we've had since January. So starting from, as of August, we've only paid out $720 in credit this year for leak losses or water losses, which is I'm really proud of because, you know, coming from, you know, before we had this AMI system to not knowing, you know, until 30 days later that you had a leak, you know, your bill pops up and you have a leak. I mean, this system works the way it's supposed to work, the way it was designed to work. And, you know, just those, you know, little bits of monitoring, you know, much closer and, you know, always being on top of, you know, what the customers need to hear and things like that, and knowing how to answer their questions and learning the system, you know, all of those things have helped tremendously to cut back on those. So that's my piece of happiness, if you will, and you know, the successes of what we've done so far.
Thanks, Michelle. And I know when we first got this AMI system, we were asking what percentage of people could we expect that would actually participate. And I think, do you remember the 20%? Is that the, yeah, that's the number we originally got there. And getting us to 50% sort of goes to all the efforts that you've put in there. And I think that those one-on-one conversations really is what has gotten, kept it moving, certainly in the last year or so. We appreciate that. But I know there were some questions. So Nathan, over to you first. I think you were the one that had one.
Yeah, I was just gonna, more of a suggestion, I guess. I know just kind of watching on y'all's social media, you usually have different outreach programs. Just an idea, maybe we have something similar in the Civic Center next door of, hey, come here, we'll show you how to use it, have computers set up, sign people up. It could be just kind of an open thing for a few hours, maybe, I don't know, once a month, once every other month or something like that. And just have some kind of engagement that way. You know, maybe people can't come in during the week, but maybe some other time they could increase numbers potentially.
We actually did, the last time that we did that was at the National Night Out. We had a table where we, you know, had a laptop and encouraged, you know, them to sign up and things. We're hoping that we would be able to maybe do, well, we were trying to do like a water fair. Stephen and I have talked about it several times to try to coordinate a time or, you know, where we could do something like that and have speakers come out and talk about maybe their backflow devices, how to manage them, you know, how to work on them themselves or just monitor stuff like that. But maybe we could do it, and I was going to suggest that we could do it on one of our meetings, you know, instead of actually having a fair that would be on a different night. You know, just kind of have some speakers come to one of our Water Commission meetings. And then just, you know, hope we get more participation, more of an audience than we do tonight. But, you know, then we could offer like freebies, things that we did on our table, at National Night Out. So, yeah, definitely that would be something to touch on again.
Are you good, Nathan? Anything else? Don, anything? On the right? Questions, comments from Michelle?
Michelle, when you mentioned earlier, you were talking about when residents call in with a problem or an issue, so you have them on the phone, you're talking to them. So what's your conversion rate or success rate for those that aren't signed up and you're able to successfully get them to sign up? I don't know, like half, a third?
So, I mean, we pretty much, if we can get them on the phone, walk them through it right then, I mean, they're excited about learning about it, yes. And some people do struggle with trying to get logged in, so, but there is a way I can help them to do it. I can create it for them, and then they can change their password. So I've always tried to do that as well. But for the most part, people who are calling and asking, I mean, they're ready to understand what they need to do, so.
Very good.
Yeah.
So you'd say more times
Pretty
than-
high percentage,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Very good.
yes.
Just thank you. We talk about the dollars and fees we didn't have to refund. As I always mention, that's water that would not have been demanded otherwise. So the real benefit is it's water that didn't get wasted. So we thank you for that.
Well, thank you, everyone. And Michelle, I think if you want to have a meeting where you can have a whole bunch of people to talk to about it, next time maybe P&Z has a proposal for the council, you can go ahead and set that up and have a captive audience there for a whole bunch of people, I think. All right, so that closed item 3. If we don't have any other questions from anyone, we'll move on to item 4. Ordinance number 61, Drought Management Plan Subcommittee Update. Kevin or Don, which way am I going first? Nothing? Go ahead.
Well, okay, we don't really have much in the way of an update to give you, but what I would say is where things are at right now is Commissioner Stone had provided some background from SAWS with some suggestions they had. We would still like feedback on that. There's really not a consensus right now that I can tell to do much of anything. So, but I would recommend each commissioner go back and read the ordinance again. In particular, there's some places where there's inconsistencies and things not defined. And it'd be worth your time to go back and look at it. I don't know, as far as the subcommittee was concerned, we were specifically looking at variances for landscape watering. And nothing new to report on that. But there's other things in there that perhaps the commission would benefit looking in more detail. But we're kind of stuck right now until we get a little bit of additional feedback. Would you agree? Yeah. Okay. That's where we're at.
Thank you, that's good. Do you think you could, give the commission a homework assignment for next month and sort of point out specific areas where you want us to look? Telling everybody to read the whole thing and sort of try to find inconsistencies may have some success, but if you can point us in certain directions, that might help. And you don't have to do it right now. If you just send something to Michelle in the next week or two, and then she can fire it off to all of us, and then we will all come highly prepared to discuss this with you. Would that be okay?
We will make an effort. How's that?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right, I think we are, any other questions, or any questions from anybody on the drought management plan? On the left? Anything on the right? Okay. We'll move on then to item 4C, recommendations, to the exciting part of the meeting tonight. And we're going to go into number 1, water rate structure. And that's a presentation from Robin, right?
Hello. Oh, there I am. Good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight. I have been on staff as a finance director now with the city of Garden Ridge for a year. It was a year in May. And one of the last things that the retiring finance director let me know before she was leaving was that we needed to have a water rate increase. When we went to kind of coordinating on how this water rates should be kind of implemented into our budgeting process, and that was kind of what we decided was, let's go ahead and just put in the water rates with our budgeting process, and that way we can kind of hopefully have like a seamless process from budget to water rates, and we would all be on the same page. And so tonight, I just kind of wanted to go over a little bit of what we feel like the need is, as far as why we need to have a rate increase, and then also like the different options that we have to present. The last rate increase that we have was in 2022, so it has been 3 years ago. Since then, we have done several water projects, and if we just kind of look at the budget for what we're looking to do in fiscal year 2025, you'll notice that the projects are still continuing. So we have a couple of big capital expenditure projects coming up in fiscal year 2025, one of them being ground storage tank rehab. These are 20-year-old tanks that Stephen is wanting us to get rehabbed. Originally, we were going to try to do both of them in 2025, but seeing the timeline and then also with the cost, he's kind of recommended now that let's get one done in 2025. We'll do the other one in 2026. So we are kind of having some projects lined up down the road, along with the other big project of our Vista Ridge tie-in. That one is in there for fiscal year 2025 as well. In order to accomplish that, we would need to get a loan from the general fund. $867,000 is the projected cost of the Vista Ridge tie-in, and we would basically just need to go ahead and get a loan for $867,000 from the general fund. So if you note in the budget, we have $867,000 in revenue and in expenditure for capital outlay. So it doesn't really affect the 2025 budget so much, but thinking ahead down the road, in fiscal year 2026 is probably when we'd project that we'd need to start repaying that loan, just depending on the terms and, the amortization schedule, what's decided as far as how long it would take to pay that back. We could be adding another $88,000 to $100,000 to our debt service for water. So those are some numbers to keep in mind when we're looking at what expenses that are coming up. We also are adding in, we have proposed a 10% salary increase for the current employees for the water department. And then we also are adding a utility operator position in for fiscal year 2025. So right now we have a vacancy in that department. So we have our foreman and we have one utility operator right now that's kind of carrying the load. We are currently seeking a second utility operator. And then when this is approved, this budget, we would be able to add a third utility operator. And that is just going to really help us to get our preventative maintenance done, routine maintenance taken care of. We're going to just make sure that we have enough personnel and staff to be able to get all of the routine maintenances, preventative maintenances taken care of for the city. Let me think. If you pull up the 2025 water rate review, I don't want to spend a long time going over what Jesse's already masterfully tiered together all of these rates, and I think it was in 2022 that you'll have this tiered structure set up. And this foundation has just been laid to make this so easy now. The foundation has been laid with all the tiers. He's done a wonderful job giving us all this breakdown. And so now we can really just look at what we want to do as far as our rate increases. The other thing, real quick, back up before I note, I just wanted to note that with this 2025 budget, we are going to be putting $67,940 into reserve and leaving us with 7 months of reserves. In this budget, I am assuming option one. Just that is what I've budgeted for. So the number would change if the rate doesn't change. But that is, just so you know, that is what I have included in the budget. And that would project us to be $67,940, putting it into reserves for fiscal year 2025 and giving us a 7-month reserve. I believe what I was told was reserve was in 2020 at our highest was at like 13 months of reserve. And then, in fiscal year 2021, we used that reserve money to install our AMI project at the $628,000. So we have been trying to build our reserves up. But I do think one of the things that is, it's a good with the stage 2 that we're in and have been in for 2 years is that, the residents have gotten really good at conservation, and that has affected our water sales. So even in this fiscal year, we have projected for this 2024 year that we are going to be earning $2,120,328 in water sales. As of July, we are at 1.5 in water sales. So it might be the first time in many years that we haven't made what we're budgeting for. We're short about $600,000, and we only have 2 months left of this fiscal year. So, unless we make $300,000 in sales, which August and September are our hottest months, and usually we do get more water sales in there. But I think the way that it's looking is we may be a little under that projection. And if you notice again, in fiscal year 2023, we were audited at 2.2. So it might be the first time that we have actually made less in water sales than we have before. So all that to say, we think it's time that we recommend a rate increase. Again, going back to that review, if we were to increase base tier, and again, where I'm kind of starting with is the base increases is a more steady increase. That money is going to be coming in with the base rate. Initially, I think it was proposed that the base rate would cover our debt service, which would be a great thing, knowing that your debt service is covered and all the bills, after that are being paid off of your water volume sales. So if we look at option one, a $4, excuse me, $4 base rate increase, and then a 1% of water sales increase, excuse me. Excuse me. We have option two of a $3 base rate increase and a 3% increase. We have option three as a $4 base rate increase and a 2% base rate increase. Option four is a $5 base rate increase with a 1% rate increase. And option five is a $5 base rate increase with a 2% sales rate increase. With each of these options, you can see the increase annual that it would give for the water department. And then also at the bottom of the budget there, you can see how many months of reserves that it would move our needle to. So all of those options, no change, would leave us at 5.8 months of reserves. Option one, 6.65, and that's why all those options round up to 7, which is where we're rounding on the budget. So that is kind of, I mean, we have, like I said, the capital improvement projects. We have an added position into our water department. And I guess if you have any questions.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions.
Sure.
There usually is in this situation. Well, does anybody else want to get started, or do you want me to go for a few of them? Everybody's like, go for it. You want to go? Go ahead.
So I'm new here, right? So let me ask the first stupid question, I guess. So the Vista Ridge tie-in, I'm assuming that's one of the new neighborhoods? Or is that something else?
So the Vista Ridge tie-in project is a project, I guess, that we've been looking at for a few years. It's something that the city of San Antonio, I believe, is offering. It's not for a new neighborhood. It would be a third water source in case that we had any kind of catastrophic failure with Edwards or the Trinity. We would have a third source of water in an emergency situation. That is the rate, that is the estimate for what it would cost to tie into that.
Okay.
And then
It'd be a
after,
good neighborhood, so that got me, I guess. Okay, gotcha, I'm tracking, thanks.
So along with the Vista Ridge, I mean, that's just the initial
yes.
capital improvement expense.
That's the
Do we
tie-in.
expect more operations and maintenance costs associated with that?
That might be a question for Stephen.
Let me rephrase that. Is there going to be a large operations and maintenance cost that would cause us to maybe reconsider what kind of rate proposal we have right now?
I haven't seen the actual plans, the total plans of it. Well, the water would be running from somewhere, it'd be connected somewhere over there by the school, the high school on their connection, because we can't connect right on the Vista Ridge. They don't want anybody to connect onto that, I think it's 48-inch pipe they have running from Bastrop all the way to San Antonio. So that would probably be roughly 1,700, 1,800 feet. That line would either stay closed at the connection, or there'd be a live line all the way up to the Schoenthal tank. So right now, where there'd be an issue, I think we'd have to flush it. We might have to treat it as a dead-end main, and ever so often flush it to keep the water not stagnant in it. Not sure, we'd probably have to have a backflow on it. So that would require testing every year also. But not really sure to the detail of what kind of maintenance would be until I get better plans on how it's going to be set up.
Are there any other, while we're on the Vista Ridge subject here, is there anything else on the left, on that one? On the right?
Yeah, this is obviously a very large alternate source of water. Is there any precedence in terms of other communities along the route, so to speak, having done this, and if there's been any experience? I mean, I understand it's a backup. Is there anything that you know that there's a negative consequence, or that this thing is financially unworkable in terms of the cost of water?
Not that I know of. I know it's pretty common for most cities to have a alternative connection to keep for an emergencies, but as of any negatives or whatever, I haven't really done a whole lot of research on anybody down the line on the Vista Ridge itself. But like I said, most other cities have a agreement with another city or something with a connection that will supply them emergency water through that. But that's what I've looked to see if there's any negative.
Chairman, can I add to that, just so that we know the vision of the city with Vista Ridge Pipeline? So that's water that's pumped from the Bastrop area down here, doesn't come out of the Trinity or the Edwards Aquifer. The Vista Ridge Pipeline, owned by SAWS and operated by SAWS, was the water source that allowed Davenport High School to be built. It's also the water source that allows Enchanted Bluffs off of Batcade Road and Heimer Estates to be built with a water supply there that we don't have to supply because it's outside the city limits. Being able to tie into the Vista Ridge Pipeline is our 30, 40, 50-year plan for emergency water from SAWS from a source other than the Edwards and Trinity Aquifer. So the main expense, other than operating costs to keep water flowing through it and keep it operational in case we need it, is going to be the high price we're going to pay for water to SAWS for that water source to come through. So, but it's something that the city council has budgeted for and hopefully is approved this coming Monday to ensure that we have emergency water supply, because it's a no-fail operation. So in the coming decades. So that's the whole Vista Ridge Pipeline capital improvement program, just to make sure everybody knows what the vision of the city is. Any questions on that?
I guess, and there's existing, what I would call routine relationships. I mean, something like this would be sprung into action in a 2-week, 3-week period where something would happen.
Yeah, so as we,
I mean, there's things in place that would allow you to, quote, open the valve, flush the line out, and you're in business.
yeah, we'll be a customer of SAWS, and we'll have a fee schedule, I'm sure, from SAWS when and if we need to use it. And every year we'll have to pump some water through it just to keep it solvent and keep it operational. But, I mean, it's our no-kidding emergency water supply directly into Tank 9, so.
Right, thanks.
Thanks.
So before I ask my question, I'll just ask, where is the council on that process? I mean, is this still under consideration, or is this done?
The council has approved it into the budget and filed the budget with the city secretary. And then we'll, on Monday with our next budget meeting, make resolutions to approve that in the budget with the different budgets that we have. So that would be coming out of the general fund, or the capital improvements fund as a loan. In the terms of that loan, we will write, after it's, when and if it's approved, a loan from the general fund, our savings as the city, to the water fund. So, and we will work through that when and if it's approved, as Robin alluded to. Fortunately, we have the savings, the reserves, currently in our budget to allow us to do that and not have to seek a SIB loan or a bond in order to do that, which in the future, if we didn't do it now, it's just going to be more expensive. It was just under $500,000 a year ago. Now it's just under $1 million estimated to do that. So That's why we want to do it now, sooner rather than later. So we have the money to do that. One of the reasons that the water fund is going low on reserves is because we've been in stage 2 drought restriction for 2 solid years. And as a whole, the city is very compliant with that. So we have sold a lot less water as we've gone. So that's why we're here. And it's time to look at the water rates. So did I answer your question, Kevin?
It did for now. Yeah, that's good. I'll hold my other questions until we get around.
Anything else on Vista Ridge? We can keep moving along there? Okay. The next question I had was just sort of, as we talk about some of these items, Vista Ridge, obviously we have some capital improvements going on with at least 1 tank this year, and then 1 tank next year. We're going to have a debt service that's going to kick in here in a few years. How far out have we looked on this and for these water rates to see if are the reserves going to be adequate that we're building there? We're only, for your proposal, we're only putting another $68,000 into the reserves. It seems fairly low. I know it gets us above that 6-month reserve rate where we want to be. But considering the future and capital improvements that we're looking at, are we setting our water department up to succeed in the 3 to 5 year time span?
It is, like you said, it's still a fairly low addition to reserves for this year. I tried to put the most conservative option into the budget because I didn't want to inflate it too much by saying, oh, we're going to increase water rates $5 and 5%. I tried to put in the most conservative out of these 5 options as just a budgeting foundation. But I do think that it might be something that we actually need to start reviewing annually because this does get us through 2025. I believe the intention behind this when it was first set up was that water rates would be reviewed annually. And you know, at that point was going to be like maybe, okay, we'll do like $1 and 1% a year or something like that. Well, since it has been 3 years, I mean, we're really already at a flat $3 base and behind because, you know, as if we would have done $1 in 2022, $1 in 2023, $1 in 2024, all that revenue would have already been added in. So I do think that it could be more aggressive, like we could look at higher increases. But I think that out of these options, any of these should get us through 2025. And I think that it's something that should start to be reviewed annually. So you can kind of do those kind of projections a little bit further down the road.
Yeah, I'm just worried a little bit about rate stability for all of the residents and everything. And
Well, and that's why.
no one's
sorry.
happy when the rates rise every year after year after year, right?
I mean, I don't know if it's less noticeable, if it's just like, you know, $1 and a percentage a year. I think that's maybe somehow SAWS handles it as just a annual rate adjustment. Or if it hurts more, you know, to have it sit there for a few years and then all of a sudden you're hit with a $3 or $4 rate increase. But it's still, regardless of how much it hurts or, you know, the residents, it's necessary for us to be able to maintain the quality of services that we provide and get what we need to get done, you know. I don't see anything in the budget. I haven't found anything that's been like, what do you say, like over expending. I haven't seen any kind of waste of resources in any of this budgeting stuff that I've dug through. And, you know, the bills that come in, expensive has increased, services has increased. So when we have these kind of projects, it's just the price of things that used to not be as expensive to maintain. Maintenance and operations is just increasing in expenses as well, so.
And just one more question, I promise, all right? And then other people can start asking questions, I hope. The last question I had there was, a lot of this is based on water volume scales, or sales, I'm sorry, and what volume are we considering? Are we for example, are we using this year's sales? Are we using last year's sales, or some kind of rolling average? What did we estimate that based on?
Let me see. I think it's a rolling average of the last 3 or 4 years that we have put into pulling it. I'm sorry, I think Jesse is the,
Yeah, I've already forgot how the algorithm works.
he had like a 43 slide presentation, and that's why I was like, well, I think we covered that one in 2022. Yes, okay. It's on the last 4 years of inside city limits and last 4 years of outside city limits, and we're looking at the lowest water consumption average over the last 4 years. Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, I promised that was my last question, so we'll go ahead and start over on the left now. Well, I'm not going to promise, I might ask another one. Go ahead. Nothing? Nathan?
Yeah, so the 5 options, these are the only 5 options, or can there be others or suggestions?
Originally, Jesse brought 36 options, and going from $1.01% all the way up to $6.06%.
Okay, and is it just a flat increase, whatever that is, the base and the percent for all the tiers? Or is there an opportunity to maybe that second half of the bigger half of the tiers is a bigger increase to help reduce consumption potentially?
We are looking at a flat across the board rate increase right now. I do know that if the city were to go into stage 3, apparently that scenario would happen, where somebody over 45,000 gallons would, I think it's 40 or 45,000, 40 would have a jump in, like I think it doubles, 100% rate increase. If
There
we
is
were
a
to,
significant surcharge.
if we go
about
into
that
a
if we are in
stage
That's
3,
That's already baked in, okay, cool.
that might be another option for y'all to discuss at some point, is if you want to change that for stage 2, but that doesn't kick in until stage 3 for us. So this is a flat across the board increase. Those 36 options, the lowest $1.01 would get us to 6.27 months of reserves. The largest option, $6.06, would get us to 8.6. So it would round up to 9 on my budget, but it's 8.59 months of reserves.
And Nathan, I will say, we've looked at those, tiered increases before. And the volume is not, see if I can say this right, the volume is so low at those higher tier rates that it doesn't significantly impact the revenue
Gotcha,
necessarily doing that.
okay.
that-
And
There we go.
the reserves, that y'all are always shooting for the 6 months?
I believe the goal was originally supposed to be 12 months.
Oh.
And the goal was to try and have 100,000 going into reserves per year. Originally, I think whenever the AMI project was when they were at their highest. They did have that 13 months of reserves, and then we used those reserves for that AMI project.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I've got several questions. Do we know what the average water user uses monthly in Garden Ridge? Because I've played around with some percentages based on somebody using 15,000 gallons a month and somebody using 40. But I don't know where the sweet spot is in terms of judging what the impact of this is.
Okay. The average is 15,000.
15?
And then I do have that cost of water inside the city limits slide. I don't know if y'all had a chance to see that. It talks about, yeah, there.
That's where I was
So
working.
it kind of gives you currently, like an average, say, of a customer who uses about 15,000 gallons a month is paying $81.95 a month in that bill, and then what they would be paying at each one of these options across there would be, so option 1, $86.47, option 2, $86.51, option 3, $86.99, 4, $87.47, 5, $87.99.
Okay, at that, under the option that's proposed, a 15,000 gallon a month user would see an average increase of 5.5%. I guess as I was looking at this is we need to be careful to be aggressive enough. I mean, I'm a bill payer up here myself, but we are sitting on years of unprecedented inflation. When I look at expenditures, healthcare is up 15%. There are raises that are required to get qualified talent, and this is definitely qualified talent, and you pay for that today. Just the water line connection going up $200,000 in 1 year. I would believe that we probably don't have a good idea on what our expenses might be going forward under this kind of environment, and I would encourage us to get what we think we need. The rates being flat for 2 years and a 5.5% increase is nothing compared to other bills that each of us are paying every day, insurance and so on. I would argue, given that at the lower rate, you're using more of your base to pay for this rather than the tier structure, to sincerely look at like a 5% base increase and a 1% tier. We're seeing declining water usage. Quite honestly, I think there's people that are giving up watering their yards because it's done, it's dust. And I mean, it's a chuckle that's in a lot of these meetings, but that's the reality. I know many neighbors have just said, I'm cooked, I can't do anything, it's a do-over. So I think we're gonna see declining water volumes. So we may see 15,000 be the high number here in the coming years. So so those are my comments. I get a sense that we're being maybe a little too timid here, and should take advantage of the fact that we've held the rates tight for 2 years in a period of unprecedented inflation. We're living this in this expense thing that's coming down, and we need to look at that. The other is, I don't know what sort of structure is proposed for outside city limits. We all look at this as 3/4 inch ICL, because that's every one of us sitting here. I don't know how many people we actually service outside the city, and are we being correctly compensated for any additional services we're having to provide there versus in the city. So that's kind of a question, but also there's no numbers behind that. And also for larger diameters, are there different inherited costs associated with that versus 3/4? But I guess without a lot of more detailed information, I probably would strongly look at a $5 and then 1% tier number. And I don't think nobody wants to pay more, but this is not out of line with what people here are having to pay for all kinds of things in everyday life after 2 years of no increase. That's it.
Well, Mr. Pold,
Hold on, just one
Oh,
second.
sorry.
So
Yes.
you asked about average usage rates. It's been a few years since we've done the descriptive statistics on this, but I'm looking at it right now, and around 17,000 is the mean usage, and this study was done over the course of 8 years, and the median usage is about around 12,000. If you want to nerd out on all the numbers, they're right there.
That still falls, that might, under the current proposal, might bump it up to 5.75% increase. Not a lot. And the other is no matter what these tiers are we look at, they really don't move the revenue meter a whole lot. And therefore, I would argue that the base is the one thing that you get regardless of water usage, and I think we need to take a careful look at that. That's all I've got.
Well, we do currently have, so we have 1,693 meters. 1,585 is in city limits, and 88 are outside the city limits. Right now,
I'm sorry, what were the numbers again? I wasn't sure what you were coming out.
sorry, the 1,693 is our total meters right now. 1,585 of those are inside city limits at 3/4 inches. We have we do have a few that are at 1.5 inch, and we have a few that are 2 inch. It's 20 meters total. And then we have outside city limits of 88 meters.
Okay.
88. And they're, right now, currently, their base rate is 46.25.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there proposed changes to those two commensurate
Yes,
with
this is including those
Okay,
as
so it
well.
would all be carried along?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So, question back on the volume assumptions for next year, because I understand you say that we think we're going to have a shortfall of about 500,000 or 600,000 this year relative to the 2.1.
Well, I don't think it'll be quite that significant of a
Okay,
shortfall.
but there will be
We-
be a shortfall, right?
I mean, it's hard to
We
predict.
got,
We have
what,
2 months
6
left in this.
6 weeks left to go in
Yes, sir.
in the year, so.
Yeah, we need 600,000 by the
Okay.
end of
But
September.
a shortfall in any event.
It
And
might,
and we've seen declining water usage over the last at least 2 years, right?
yes, sir.
And we're using I believe I understood you to say a rolling 4-year average
Yes,
for
sir.
usage?
Uh-huh.
So my question is, what is the volume usage assumption, if you will, where we think we're going to land this year in 2024 compared to the volume usage that we've got in the 2025 budget? Because my concern is that if we're basing our volume assumptions on 3-4 years ago, where the usage was higher than this year or last year, are we being too generous in our volume estimates for 2025?
I don't,
I guess asked another way, how much of that increase, that $98,000 increase in water sales is rate versus volume?
well, so it is looking over the last 4 years, but it's also coming up to, I think we went all the way through May whenever we started looking at volume. And so we are taking into account the decline of the volume of consumption. So this 98,220 increase of a 1%, and even like the current, so even if we were not to have any kind of rate increase, the 2.1 million is probably what I would have left it in as at the budget for
I'm
this.
sorry, with what?
It would be probably the number that we would have used for 2025, even though we may be short. It is, as far as like calculating the last 4 years of consumption and volume, I mean, we're including it up through May. So, I mean, I think it's fairly accurate as far as it's hard to estimate it's hard to look down the road when in that regard to see where we might be as far as consumption.
Yeah, I guess my point is that if we're basing our estimate or projection, assumption, however you want to describe it, on years where there has been higher usage, are we discounting that sum or saying maybe, okay, whatever this rolling average has, or maybe next year we assume 90% of it or 95%, or, you know, is there anything that tells us that those decreasing usage trends are going to turn around for any reason?
Well, we are looking at the lowest of the average. And again, I think that's why we are emphasizing more on the base rate. Like whenever you look at the 3 and 3, option 3 right there, no, sorry, option 2. If you're seeing a 3 and 3%, in theory, that $3 base rate increase and 3% would get you more than option 1. But whenever you're relying more on water sales, the consumption in that option. So that's kind of why more of our proposals of options is a higher base rate increase and less of a volume sales percentage increase. Does that make sense?
So how sensitive is that tier percentage increase? Meaning, so for your option 2, you've got $3 base rate, 3%. What's the difference if you go $3 base rate and 4%? I mean, I think I've heard earlier is that really doesn't move, the tier rate doesn't really move the needle much.
So a $3.
So why don't you can look at option 1 and option 3, and you can see it's $4, and 1% and 2%, and you can sort of compare the differences as you look across there. And if you want to look at the overall impact.
Okay, yeah, 1 and 3, sure, that's where I'm trying to get.
Okay.
If you look at the overall impact system-wide, it ends up being about $17,000 in revenue total for 1%-ish.
Okay, yeah.
And we do have a note to say $1 increase in bait rate is calculating at $20,529 a year. A 1% increase in a tier rate is about $16,000 a year.
Yeah, I found it on this page
Okay,
here. It's
good.
the comparison I was trying to make. Yeah, that's just, my concern is, have we been too generous in our volume estimates for next year? Under this proposal, meaning that to get the revenue that we need to fund the activities that we want to, you know, do we need to look at a larger
So just to be
revenue
clear,
increase?
she's not using, last year was kind of was a very high volume of sales. We've done this demand analysis before. What we found is temperature is highly correlated to water usage.
Sure.
Rainfall has a very slight negative correlation, but temperature is the main driver there. So if I heard Robin right, is that we're using the lowest of the last 4 years to determine our volume
Yes.
when we do these estimates on the sales.
Oh, I thought it was a average.
I said rolling average, she said lowest. We're good?
We're using the lowest water consumption for the last 4 years for inside and outside city limits.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was me saying rolling, I messed everybody up. Good, Steve? Yes. Kevin, questions?
First of all, thank you, because I know from personal experience, this is an extremely onerous and difficult task to which there is no right answer. So nothing I'm saying is critical or implies any criticism of the effort. It's just hard. There's no easy way to do it. But a little context to keep in mind. First of all, 3 years ago, at any rate, the first 5,000 gallons of usage was not charged. It was built into the base rate. So when we look at adding money to the base rate, we also charged for water we didn't charge before. So for the low volume users, it's a more significant impact than it appears. So they've had significant increases over a 3-year period, just for context. Second, this is probably the 4th year now that we've heard comment on the volume sales versus the volume revenue versus base rate revenue. At some point, we have to figure out how to break our accounting system out so we track those numbers separately. We should know the amount of revenue being generated from the base rate and the amount of revenue being generated from volume sales. So at some point, we need to figure that out. Second or third, there's a lot of comments made about in the budget about figuring out preventive maintenance requests and things we have to do in the future with the tanks. These are also things that have been known for years, and we still have those requirements ill-defined. So all those things give me skepticism. What the model does very well is take what you put in, and it does some automatic increases in the costs over the 5-year period. And when it increases costs, it assumes a decrease in the sales, right? As price goes up, demand goes down a little bit. That's kind of cooked into the model. What has never been in there, because we haven't figured out how to put it there, is a good forecast for the INS, the investment interest and costs. Because what's in the model is the previous capital improvement budget, not what's coming up, although we have added the Vista Ridge. So that's good. That's progress. But we have to keep in mind as we get ready to figure out the recommendation that we continue to go down this path because we don't know any better. It's a small city and we're all amateurs. But the rate setting structure is not supposed to be the budget process. We're actually doing this process backwards. We should have a master plan and a preventive maintenance plan with long-term capital costs prepared for a 5-year horizon. We should know what we plan on. Do unexpected things happen? Of course they do. But from starting with that, then you have your cost forecast, which is pretty good, right, for our expenditures. And then that generates your revenue requirements. After that, we figure out, based on equity and whatever criteria the city wants, what rate structure we should do, with the idea that it should be stable for a 5-year period. You do review it every year, and that was put into the ordinance. We need to review it every year. But the hope is, only a couple of those years do you make small tweaks. But every time you do a new capital forecast, we should have a new associated cost structure and rate plan. So we're kind of approaching this backwards, and I would point out that our low reserves, when they were high before, the first reason they went down is we funded the AMI project out of it, and now we're going to fund Vista Ridge out of it, in essence. If we weren't doing that, we would have over 13 months reserves right now. So we have to kind of keep that in mind, is that to sell it to council and to the citizens, there's both sides of that equation. And I don't know that it's been fully presented. I also don't know that it can be right now. We are where we are. We decided last October, November timeframe, we would postpone discussions of a rate increase until the budget cycle so we could try to get those things lined up. So we've known we were approaching a shortfall for a while, and I do agree that we're going to have to make a recommendation for an increase. But I'm not sure we have the information to know how much to recommend because everything's kind of still nebulous. So I guess I'll ask Stephen, because I haven't heard it, haven't met in 3 months, but do we have the water master plan update? Is that available yet?
No.
With the tanks, were we deciding to do one this year and one next year? I don't know how to word the question, but is it based on space available in the budget, or is it based on your sense of they're about to fall apart if we don't do at least one of them? I mean, where's the level of risk right now?
One's worse than the other. Municipal needs more attention than 2252 plant. 2252 plant could be pushed another year. I wanted to try to do two at the same time, but I figured that was going to be pushing my luck because our best time to do one would be in the winter months. So trying to push two in the winter months at probably a window of 30 to 60 days down probably would be not reasonable. So that's why I pushed down to drop one to do. Tanks, these are bolted tanks. They are not the gold standard when you go get tanks. They're more of the value tank back when it got put up. If these were welded tanks, they could go 100 years and not have too much issues with them. But bolted tanks, they rust, they leak, they always need to be resurfaced. And these actually have never been. Normally, you have to repaint them and do all that within every 10 years. So they're way past due. I mean, it should have been looked at maybe 10 years ago when that was so. And basically to rehab them, one at a time now, would be saving a lot, because if I wanted to get, say, a welded tank, a 300,000 welded tank, we could be looking anywhere from 750,000 to $1 million, because some of it might need to be repiped, because you have to either put it in the same spot or you have to put it in a different location. So repiping would have to be a cause. You'd have to redesign the whole thing. So right now, doing a rehab is going to buy us some time to figure out some better option down the line.
Okay, and on the, I guess it's the proposed budget, there's like 79, almost, we'll just say 70K for the tank in the next year. Given cost increases, would we say it's fair to be, maybe it's 90K for the one after that? Is that a reasonable guess?
Can you say that one more time? I didn't have that.
Yeah, the 2025 budget for that, under capital expenditures, there's a note on the variance amended to budget of $69,000 for the ground storage rehab tank. Is that the estimated cost to rehab one tank? No, it says 69 was added. I don't know. The 240,000, I assume, includes more than just the tank, but, or does it?
I believe it was a 20% contingency added on just in case there was anything extra that was found that needed attention.
All right, so for finance, then, is the second tank included in the 5-year forecast?
So what we have right here is 240,000 is what the one tank rehab is going to be in 2025. It's saying it's a 69,000 increase over this 170,000 that we had in capital expenditures in 2024. So it's not saying that that 170 was the well rehab. I think it was also sharing those were some other projects. And so we're just saying overall, the variance from 2025's budget to 2024 is 69,273. But that was just, the 240,000 is the cost of doing the one tank. And then in 2026, we would probably need to get it requoted to make sure that it's going to be around the same price for 2026. That's why it is a little hard to cost project 5 years down the road, because as just what we've talked about earlier this evening, the Vista Ridge tie-in a couple years ago was only going to be 500,000, and now a couple years later, it's 867,000. So that makes it a little difficult with the economy right now and the way things have been increasing.
Again, it's not a criticism, because I understand that, but we have to.
Mm-hmm.
We have to project ahead, or these numbers don't mean anything. So they have to be our best guess. So the operative question is that second tank for the year after included in those numbers for the 5-year? So it's not. So it's based on just the one tank. Okay, so I'm seeing Councilman Valdez nod his head, so I'm assuming that that's correct. So anyhow, I guess my point is, we don't really have all the information, but we also don't have time to get it. So my thought, just looking, is that we need to do what we did last year, and we need to increase, but keep it small until we can make it defendable and know that there is a full plan. The engineer's been tied up with the 2252 project, so master plan gets delayed. There's just a lot of things that aren't getting done. I've said enough personal opinions. I would add that some of you were here to remember that the original rate structure did not have as much marginal increase with increasing consumption. That was adopted. Previous philosophy was to try to avoid drought management restrictions by just charging more. Well, they worked. The high users started conserving and they didn't use as much. But what we also found in that process is it makes it almost impossible to accurately forecast the revenue because it's very demand sensitive when you do that. But there's nothing in this rate structure that says that we're looking at that. So I'm still a little confused. Well, let me ask us a question. We're just keeping the same rate structure, so we're applying the 1% or 2% increase, the same increase to each tier inside and outside the city?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that the plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that will, over time, actually increase the marginal rate. So that, again, at some point, as a commission, we've got to go back and relook at that, or the staff needs to. But I agree that we don't want to be in a position where we're going to be short, and we do have some significant costs coming up. I'm just not sure how you have the information to make an informed choice or recommendation of the council. But, I just don't know what it is. It's kind of just based on your gut feel, and we know it needs to go. We know it needs to go up. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's just how much. Right now, I think you pointed out it was 5% increase, 5.5% increase for the 15,000 gallon user. It's 9% for the 5,000, 7% for the 10,000, but the top users goes down to 1.5% increase. So that may be okay. I'm not saying that's bad, because that starts to take the curve out, and those low users, that demand is not very sensitive. So we know we'd get the revenue.
Our demand is not sensitive. Our demand is fairly inelastic on this. We've done this analysis before, remember? I mean, it's going down, but it's not, it is not sensitive to pricing necessarily.
Wasn't necessarily the best choice of words, but it is sensitive to pricing at the higher tiers. I don't know that analysis really breaks it out at that level, because it aggregates the individual consumers' gallons. So, but you're right, overall it's inelastic. Overall, it doesn't change much with price. That's fair. But anyhow, I think you've answered my questions, and I'm sorry for my continued ranting, but it's a tough problem.
So do we have to make a decision tonight? Is there a timeline? Because I think that these usually take effect at the beginning of the calendar year. Are we looking to make this take effect at the beginning of the budget year? Is that the point on this one? Does 1 month matter?
Well, I think, we're trying to get the budget approved in this next budget meeting this week, or next week. But all of these, if they're approved in the budget, would be going into effect October 1st.
I understand the budget. When do you expect the water rates? Same time?
Yes. It would be October 1st, so it would actually hit on the November 1st bill.
Okay.
Just to clarify, so they would be effective with the budget, but they actually wouldn't, the customer wouldn't see them on their bill until the billing cycle that starts at the end of October and goes through the end of November. And so the bills that they receive early December is when they would actually see the increase in place. We do strongly recommend Water Commission to make a recommendation tonight so that can go to council in September. Because keep in mind, once council takes action on that, staff then has to go and put the new rates in Ordinance 54 and bring that back to council for their action. The ordinance then needs to be published in a newspaper, so it is a pretty lengthy process, and there's only so many months of council meetings that we have between now and October.
So there's your answer, Kevin. Yes, we have to make a decision tonight. So knowing that we need to make a recommendation tonight, as we look at this, there's not a widespread on the options, to be perfectly honest. We can do some math quickly and see what the difference, the impact of the consumer is between option 1 and option 5, but it actually is certainly not that large at the lower rates. And even at the higher rates, I think you're looking at a 2% to a 1% change there. Me doing some real quick math in public, as I'm sure someone will actually do the math and tell me if I'm right or wrong. But I think as we look across this, I am more inclined to go to a larger increase right now to hedge our bets for the future. I know, I think it was you, Bill, that mentioned kind of unprecedented inflation, and we're getting a lot of pop-up capital improvements that are coming in here. I personally am not real comfortable with doing the lowest option, recommending that to council, because I think we're just setting ourselves up for needing large increases again in the future. And certainly waiting 2 to 3 years is not helpful also. But that's just my personal opinion there to directly contradict Commissioner Harshberger. You're welcome.
Looking at a larger increase in the base tends to be offset by the arguments that we have to do major capital improvements, this tie-in and new tanks. As a consumer, you tend to correlate better having to pay maybe a higher lump fee for your service because the system has to make capital improvements, but yet the city is not increasing the marginal rates, the tier rates. So I think there's a route to explain why it might have to be what it would appear to be perhaps a large increase in the base. I'm proposing $5, but the tier rates stay the same because quite simply we've got to fund a third source of water, which to me is blindingly obvious to do, and we should do it. And the other is we have an aging system that's, I mean, you need to go into the details, but people understand aging systems and the need to invest in, particularly safety systems like water. So I think those are cogent arguments for why the base might be higher. And I would argue again, it's not a small amount, but we've gone a couple of years with no increase, and yet this budget is replete with big expenses going up.
I agree with the higher base rate increase as well. I think that I was looking at the chart she just had, and if you look at the, 10 to 20,000 or so groups, that you're gonna get the highest monthly average, so you're gonna get the most cash flow that way. And then it kind of tapers off as you go higher in the tiers. But then that still gets the higher people up a little bit. So I think base rate, that $5 is a good option for sure.
If you go too low right now, customer's going to be upset any increase, whether it be $1, $5, whatever. If you do the $1 right now, a year or so later, everything starts going south. Now you got to come back in there and ask for more money. Might as well just rip the bandage off right now and get it over with. Otherwise, you'll have a lot of public opinion ask, why didn't you ask? If you're going to increase, why didn't you ask enough to start with, instead of come back to the well more and more and more times? So I would go for the higher rates.
I agree with that. That makes sense.
Ultimately, we don't really have much choice. I just think we should not go more than a 1% tier increase until we have some more rationale for doing it. But remember, that's not a $5 rate, that's a $5 increase in the rate. And again, for discussion purposes, while the median user, or mean, depending on which number you want to use, was around 15 to 17,000. From a cost point of view, it's closer to the 30,000 gallons for the cost, right? If you take the median cost for all users and divide the cost among all users, it's the same equivalent for about 30,000 gallons of revenue, which is telling you that the low-volume users are paying about 2/3 the cost of our water system. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but those are the kinds of discussions we have not had. We haven't looked at the criteria. We haven't looked at what's the goals of the city or made any recommendations on that. We're just saying, here's a budget, come up with a number that matches. So I guess what I'm saying is I can live with the $5 increase in the base rate as long as we limit the tier increase to 1%. And someone promised me we're going to look at what we're doing outside the city, because those rates are substantially higher than inside the city, because originally the water department was all general fund and they didn't pay taxes. But now the water department through the rates is more or less self-funding. So there's less reason for it to be that high. So if you do the same percentage increase across the board, you're taking those folks and giving them a much bigger increase, and they already have much less water use. So it's not going to make a whole lot of difference to our revenue one way or another, but I'm not sure it sends the best message. So anyway, I'm open to any other inputs.
All right, are there any more questions for city staff at this point? We've had a lot of discussion. Just want to make sure there's no more questions for the city staff. And we've had a lot of discussion on this. Is anybody to the point of making a recommendation?
I'd like to make a recommendation or a motion that, for the budgeting process, that the $5 base increase with a 1% tier be adopted.
Okay, so that, I think what you meant to say was a recommendation that we propose to city council to accept option 4 from the city staff?
That's correct.
All right, so we have a motion there to propose option 4 to city council. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. So we've had a lot of discussion about this already. A lot of it's centered on trying to make sure that we increase the rates enough to sort of make this work out. We have several other options that are out there. Any discussion on this and the pros and cons of option 4? I'll start over here on the left. Don, anything more on this? Nathan? No?
Just want to end by saying I've had a lot to say, but thank you one more time for the hard work. And I think I'm grateful. I didn't have to do the whole project this year with Jesse. So thank you very much.
All right. We have motion and a second there. I think we've had enough discussion on this one. Time to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So we'll go ahead and forward option number 4 from the city to city council for, our recommendation is for for the city council is option 4 for the increase, for the water rate increase. Man, I butchered that one, but hopefully somebody will write that down a lot better than what I just said. There we go. Marissa's got me covered. Thank you. All right, thank you, and thank you, Robin. And you can blame this wire brushing on us having several years of experience on this one already and coming in new. It's this much fun every year, by the way, so looking forward to this. And I'm sure this will happen again, actually, in a few weeks when you're in front of council, so that's perfect. It's a good warm-up. But thank you very much for putting up with all this and working with us tonight. All right, I think we are now to 4C number 2 for recommendations. All right, I tore all my papers all apart here. Give me just a second to get reorganized. But we have several, there it is. We have several water commissioners whose terms of office come due in September of 2024. It looks like Bill, Don, Steve, and Nathan are all in that. I know, Nathan, you just got appointed, but yes, your place, your term expires in September of 2024. So, yeah, if you're still willing to serve after September 2024, then we can go ahead and recommend to council that all of these will get approved. And I'd like to do these in, well, first of all, let's ask everybody if you're still willing to continue to serve on the Water Commission here. So, Nathan? Good?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Okay. We good lumping them all in one big, thank you, all right. So what we are looking for is a motion to recommend to city council to extend, renew, reappoint, thank you very much, these 4 commissioners for another term.
Okay, I will make a motion that we recommend to council that they reappoint Commissioners Poole, Stone, Stedman, and Dorsey for another term of the Water Commission.
Excellent excellent motion, I appreciate that. Do you have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Another unanimous motion there. And I think that is everything. Nope. Future agenda items. So we are on item 4D, future agenda items. This is not to start discussing any items, but if there's any item that you thought of during this time frame that you'd like to add to next month's agenda, now is the time to go ahead and bring that up to me. Anything on the left? Any future agenda items on the right? Nope. Okay. No future agenda items. That brings us to agenda item number 5, citizen comment period. And no citizens for comments at this period. So that brings us to adjournment. And we'll go ahead and call this meeting adjourned at 7:44 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.